Respected Chairman, SECP, Mr. Akif Saeed, Chairperson, PSX, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, CIO and co-founder, Tundra founder, Mr. Mattias Martinsson, CEO, Mahaana Wealth, Mr. Shamoon Tariq, fellow members and distinguished guests. Assalamu alaikum, good evening, and a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Aisha Nasser, and I'll be your host for the evening. By day, I'm a financial analyst at a US-based private equity firm, but tonight I'm here with you all to listen to the thought-provoking and inspirational conversations that will be held here. Today's panel discussion is on positioning Pakistan's capital markets globally. The panelists will delve into the pivotal strategies to elevate Pakistan's presence on the global stage. Discussions will revolve around regulatory reforms, expanding the domestic and foreign investor base, enhancing market liquidity, driving technological innovation, governance and ESG practices, and the potential of pension funds. Before we begin, I'd like to draw your attention towards the blue 10 cards on your table to ask questions. Please go to slide.to.com, enter code #CFA, press the Q&A tab, and post your questions. It is my immense pleasure to now announce our moderator and the visionary behind this event, Mr. Shamoon Tariq. With over a decade of experience in the global capital markets, Mr. Shamoon is currently the CEO of Mahaana Wealth, Pakistan's first digital-only asset management company. He's also the Vice President of the Swedish Business Council of Pakistan. Prior to that, he was the Vice CIO and a partner at Tundra founder. He's a charter holder and was recognized by CityWire as one of the top 10 global fund managers in emerging Asia, frontier Asia, and the MENA region. Please join me in applause in welcoming Mr. Shamoon Tariq.
Thank you. No one has ever praised me this much, as much you have done. So, first of all, thank you, CFA Association, for organizing such an event where we can discuss about the key challenges that Pakistan capital market has been facing and still facing, and what good and bad has happened over the last decade and so forth. I would really like to thank Madam Shamshad. I know you have been busy, but you took time out for this, and since you have been the governor of State Bank and then finance minister and now the PSX chairperson, you have immense overview of what the financial ecosystem of Pakistan actually looks like. At the same time, Akif Saeed Saab, thank you for flying over especially, and you have been instrumental, especially in the digitization and the policy reforms that we have seen. And one example is standing in front of you when you inducted us in the SECP sandbox for digital AMC. And today we are very much live, and we are bringing in the retail investors and so forth. So thank you so much for taking all those initiatives, and we look forward to work together again. Mattias, but the real name is, pronunciation is Mattias. It's a partner, a friend, and obviously a cross-shareholder of each other's company. But above all, true believer in Pakistan. When I joined Tundra in 2012 and went to Stockholm, I actually thought that he's Pakistani, and he coined a term, perception arbitrage for Pakistan, and we will be talking about that shortly on that. But I did not have to convince him on Pakistan and so forth. And Tundra has been one of the most active and largest investor. When everyone was kind of leaving, Tundra was the one who actually stayed and still is one of the largest capital market investor and so forth. With that, I would like to invite our panelists on the stage, Madam Shamshad, Akif Saeed Saab, Mattias. It's obviously a talk. It's not something that we are pinpointing. It's a discussion that what we can learn from each other, from our global experiences, from our local experiences, and what a regulator is doing, what a stock exchange and the capital market is doing, and also the perspective of foreigner investor and also a local investor together, and so forth. Please, sir. Perfect. Am I audible? So maybe I think we will ask our guest from Sweden to start over, and maybe he can share a bit of his journey on Pakistan and why you are actually here today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shamoon. So my background is that I've been doing emerging markets for the last 28 years. I was one of the Swedes that introduced Russian equities to Scandinavian investors. And after that, I always kind of looked for kind of the undiscovered markets. I came across Pakistan in 2005, and I kind of rejected the idea of investing there because I had this picture in my mind of what Pakistan would look like. But I took a closer look, and I saw that the equity market was surprisingly well developed. You had good brokerages here providing good equity research. I looked at the companies, and I found companies that have been operating for the last 50, 60 years, even over a century. So the notion of sometime having a fund that invested in Pakistan was born. So we actually started Tundra 13 years ago with the first fund was a Pakistan fund. And we were ridiculed, people laughed at us, some people got angry when we said that we would do this and instead of kind of a traditional fund. But the following 4 years, the Pakistan fund was among the top 10 equity funds in Sweden every year. And that allowed us to build Tundra. And based on the success we had in Pakistan, that allowed us to build the rest of the company. So today we manage $1 billion in assets. 3/4 of that is global emerging markets now. But Pakistan was always the foundation for it, and will always be a market very close to my heart.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so Madam Shamshad, obviously having seen the entire financial spectrum of the financial sector, in your opinion, where do Pakistan stand from the global perspective? Where have we lagged? What are we doing? And where are we headed?
I think we have made enormous progress over the last few decades, because we started the journey after restructuring the PSX, which was a broker-led and broker-owned and driven exchange. And as we were transforming it, and I was at the Asian Development Bank, and I'm sure some of these people know, I was called in to help the reforms of the stock exchange. And it had to be, I was called for export development, but given the crisis, external finance crisis, I identified capital market as an area where it needed reforms, and it would generate capital that Pakistan needs and attract the foreign investment in it. And The then finance minister really liked the idea because of the capital. And I think since then, we have seen the capital market generate effective returns, and also we have been able to professionalize this industry. Fast forward it, I mean, I didn't realize that I would come back to PSX after I landed from overseas, and I have been associated with this exchange, and I think it has done phenomenal work, which I can talk a bit later about what are the innovations that have happened, how have we kind of learned lessons from the international experience, and how we hope to do so moving forward. So let me stop here.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Akif Saab, obviously when SECP and PSX was lobbying for Pakistan to be upgraded from frontier to emerging market, and you were in charge of that project, and it was Tundra colleagues who actually traveled. So I went to New York, and my one colleague actually was with you in Hong Kong and so forth. So you have seen that journey and so forth, and now you're back in SECP as chairman. And obviously what we have seen in terms of the digitization especially and the reforms that you have taken. But before we get into that, how do you see the Pakistan market compared to 2015 and today? Are we moving forward? What has changed? Are we able to attract foreign capital and so forth, in your opinion?
I think I'll start with what Mattias said in terms of perception. I think as a foreigner sitting thousands of miles away, he had this perception about Pakistan, but more or less similar perception local residents have about PSX itself. So I believe this is where one area which PSX and the market participants, other infrastructure entities have to work on. If we look at in terms of technology, they are world-class institutions, be it PSX, CDC and NCCPL. The number of products when we go to ISCO, we talk about how the capital gain tax is calculated in Pakistan. Singapore asked for help in terms of to understand, and they are looking at it from their own jurisdiction's point of view. CDC recently got the chairmanship of the Asia Pacific Association of Depositories. So as the infrastructure, I believe market technology-wise and even regulatory, post 2008, I'll not go start from 15, but 2008 onwards, a lot has happened in terms of risk management, in terms of the brokerage industry itself, but the perception aspect still remains. I think this is where we believe a lot of effort needs to go in. Pleased to, not a formal, I've been communicated, but this morning I was talking to Imran Bhatt, our executive director. He mentioned that the PSX board has also agreed to it. So we are looking at setting up a capital market development fund with contribution from CDC, NCCPL and PSX. I think similar, we have put up a proposal with MUFAB also. So the mutual fund industry should come up with the white label awareness campaign. I think that's for me. Coming back to your specific question in terms of 15 to 24, I think it has to be looked in the overall context of the macro political economic situation and bring in the 2 or 4 years of COVID also. I think things should have moved a lot faster and in the right direction. But these two inhibiting factors, but I think all these two things are behind us. I look forward to, I think, much more stable and less volatile, because I believe volatility is good, but to the extent. So let's see. Things will move up as we go along.
Sounds good, sounds good. Before we get to the particular, I'll ask the same question to Mattias as well. 2013 and today, are you more bullish, or and also from the perspective of the regional markets that Tundra generally invests in?
Well, I think obviously when we started Tundra in October 2011, that was basically the starting point of more than a decade of emerging markets in general underperforming. And particularly hurt were the smaller emerging markets, because as you might recall, that China in 2011 around was somewhere around 15% of the emerging markets benchmark. As China grew, it crowded out the smaller emerging markets, so less money, not only to market like Pakistan, but also Indonesia, Philippines, etc. So it's been a very tough period for small emerging markets. And obviously Pakistan, with its particular problems, primarily the perception problem, I think has fared even more badly during this period. But what we see is that if we look at the last couple of years, a crisis like this is the worst crisis not only Pakistan but also Sri Lanka, Egypt, Bangladesh has had for 30 years. And of course you can be pessimistic and say that, look, here are the problems in this market, but I would rather say that now we've had this crisis and it's very unlikely that you will see something similar in the next 4 to 5. So I think it's time now to look forward. The risk is lower now than it was 5 or 6 years ago, and it's lower now than it was in 2013. But it's always the case then that when you've had these periods, when the risk is actually lower going ahead, that's also the time when it's hardest to get investors. But I think now is a good time. We have seen a small indication of that we actually got an international institutional investor that invested with us a small amount, $50 million in July. But that's the first indication of real interest, not only talking, but of actual real money being put in place in almost 10 years. And it's the same for our colleagues. So I'm getting optimistic.
That's a very encouraging. And obviously, when we used to pitch to the foreign investors and looking at the Bloomberg data, I think the Pakistan Stock Exchange, if we take that as a sample, in dollar terms, the profitability growth has been highest in the world, even compared to India or any other market. But in terms of the valuation, we are maybe 1/5 of what India, or maybe almost 1/3 or half of even Bangladesh, for that matter. So that brings a question: how can we actually increase that base, that capital formation, increase that investor base? Obviously I'll ask Mattias about the foreign investors, but from the local investor base, when are we going to cross that 300,000? And in your opinion, what are the problems and the issues that you face, and so forth? And I'll also like to add something after you have, because in the last 3-4 months, when we opened our wait list and tested our model, we actually found few things, and that gives me a very encouraging view that it is actually possible that we can actually bring the retail capital into the market, and that should be the base, like in Sweden, and so forth. But would like to hear your views on that.
Well, first of all, I think today our retail base, regrettably, while it has grown, it's quite small, because if you dissect it, the real investors in the exchange are small. But people have made a lot of money. And since I am in Karachi, whenever foreign investors come in, and they are coming in, our entities are not going abroad. So you can see that despite the fact that our brokers and our investment fund managers and all that are sitting in Pakistan, but people are coming from outside. So I think there is a strong interest from outside, because they spend money, and I'm often invited to these dialogues, and there is so little that they know besides the bad news in Pakistan. And the bad news is political instability and frequent changes in the governments in the past. Now obviously we have had fund program that gives a lot of confidence to everybody that there will be sufficient money and confidence. But inherently, we have not been able to move the curve in terms of the number of investors. And I think that would require building huge trust and confidence in our market. So we have to really hold the markets accountable very rigorously, and we have to make sure that whenever we hold them accountable, that we take appropriate actions. I can tell you at the PSX we have Regulatory Affairs Committee, and we very rigorously analyze the situation of the defaulters. And if you do not identify the defaulters and make sure that the shareholders and others, either it's the shareholders or those investing, are not listed at the website, this knowledge will not and confidence will not come. So that's one area. The other is product diversification. I think there is steadily innovation and diversification happening, but I can talk about it later because I'm sure Akif has much more from his front. So let me
Absolutely. I think Akif Saab is at the helm of it because he controls the policy and the new entrants and the technology side of things. Before I share my experience, how it has been, I would really like to hear your views on that, especially in terms of what has been the reason of lower investor base. Is it the trust? Is it the technology? Is it the products? Is it investor education? What exactly that is something that we are lacking for the last so many years?
I think it's all of above. That's the simple answer. Perception to begin with. Some very much well-grounded. If you go back to 2008 and what happened in the subsequent years. If I have to, my own thought processes in terms of capital market, there are three verticals or pillars. The first one is, what you're talking about, is the onboarding. I think that's the most critical part, how quickly an investor can be onboarded. We have done some progress in terms of centralized gateway portal, but we've been pushing CDC to market it out, to make it much more visible. That's something which they're working on. I think that's one area which should be. And second is, of course, the awareness. This is where the capital market development plan comes in, because markets have to lead. This is the capital market institutions which have to go out and white label the market itself and create awareness about. Third, which we have done, and I think this is the right forum to talk about, is the independent financial advisors. I think the capital requirement is minimum. It could be a company, it could be individuals. I think CFA charter holders are a perfect candidate to be in their own business. Independent financial advisors have interest aligned with the clients. I think this is something which we want to push as a business. Something which we are in discussion with MOFAB for independent distributors also. We believe the mutual fund industry has to focus on the fund management part, and we have to take out the distribution and encourage to have independent distribution. So any individual who has the skill set in terms of fund management or advisory can do the distribution, can do the sale or financial planning in terms of capital market. These are the areas, and of course there are macroeconomic and plus the alternate investments available in other assets. I think documentation, but I think the last fiscal, so the last budget has provided a sort of other thing. Under the IMF program, the documentation sort of will be speeding up, should encourage investors, or at least the arbitrage or the difference between a regulated and unregulated economy. will narrow down over the time. So I think these are the steps as far as SECP is concerned. Onboarding is one priority. Investor awareness is, of course, the second. And the third is in terms of reducing the cost itself. I think that's where the digitalization comes in. We are working with the three institutions, how the technology part can be looked at and be brought under one umbrella that will reduce the cost to the overall market. And of course, it will bring its own efficiencies in terms of turnaround time.
Absolutely. I think, Mattias, you can add a lot. Like I've lived in Sweden, and that digitization, and like with Sweden, 99.9% people financially literate, having mutual fund and all sort of accounts and so forth. What can Pakistan learn from Sweden?
Well, I think first, because Sweden, for those who don't know it, in mutual funds, I think it's the one most, and also in equity ownership, is if not the highest in the world per capita, it's among the highest. In Sweden, I think we had the advantage that citizens were already documented, which meant that it was, and we had high taxation. So what Sweden did in the 70s was that they introduced reliefs for those that put some of their income in savings, which kind of set off the revolution there. So I think that what Pakistan does now, or tries to do with the documentation, I think that's a good step. I think the second part, and now I'm speaking as a foreigner in terms of our administrative work, is, and I've said this many times, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but one of the biggest challenge for us right now is the taxation in Pakistan. That we as a foreigner pay capital gains tax, and it's not the money per se, but it is the fact that first of all it takes a month just to get you need a tax advisor. Then we need every day to reserve tax, and when we look back at the time when we had a Pakistan fund, that meant that fund, if the fund went up 1%, after tax it was 0.85%. So we kind of felt also that this is not a sustainable product. So I think making it easier for foreigners, maybe giving them the chance instead to pay 0.1% on every transaction. We had no problem with that. But so that it's administratively easier, and you can even have foreign Pakistan funds again, because like it is now, that's not going to happen, because we can't compete with local fund managers.
No, I agree. With the taxation problem, we had to go with that. I'll just like to share, like obviously, the inspiration of starting Mahaana Wealth was Avanza, Sweden and so forth. And initially when we started, we were more thinking that maybe it's just the investment education that is needed. But like when we actually came in here, we realized that it's the technology, it's the onboarding, again, technology, that part and so forth. So if I may share about Tundra, so we were managing at that time decent amount of money, but the total team size was like 9 people. And we had 3 offices, including Pakistan and Vietnam. But we were only doing fund management. The KYC was done by someone else, already documented. Back offices were outsourced. Even accounting were outsourced. So we could focus, and we have been one of the world's best fund managers for many years because we could only focus on that. But here, the financial institutions, they have to do the KYC themselves 2 times, 3 times, which is being done by so many financial institutions already. We do the back office ourselves, we do the investment management ourselves, and so forth, and then the distribution as well. Most of the Tundra money was actually coming from the Swedish pension system. So we did not even have a proper salesperson, right? And so forth. So I think that was the inspiration to kind of replicate that and so forth. But my learning so far in the last 1 year or so has been Pakistan lacks technological infrastructure across the board, whether it's a banking system, whether it's CDC, whether it's national clearing. And I will share the results in a separate meeting and so forth. But we are always fighting with that. So technology is one. So it's not just the investor education, in my opinion. I think every institution has to invest in the technology, whether it's CDC, whether it's national trading, and same goes with the stock exchange. We tried algorithmic trading with the stock exchange. It works, but still, a lot of it has to be upgraded and so forth. So while we are working on the investor education and answering the question of how to increase that retail base from 300 to 3 million maybe, I think technology has to be upgraded, not just for the asset managers, but also at the same time the other financial stakeholders and so forth. From that, I think that is a question. Like obviously, one area that we wanted to delve in was technology. I would really like to hear, ma'am, what are we doing on the technological front so that we build those rails for any new, as Akif Saab said, new investment advisor, if anyone wants to come in, what kind of technology are we preparing for them to be a plug and play? So they are just the investment managers, not have to do the entire end-to-end leg and so forth.
We went through very difficult period, we went through a tremendously difficult period at the exchange, SECP, to simplify the rules, regulations, and procedures. But somehow, we still don't have an automaticity in the thing. We have to submit so many papers, and investors obviously go through difficult times. And I think it's basically because this economy is so undocumented that there is a bit of a lack of trust in how it's going, when if it gets integrated, what complications it will bring. But if we introduce a very sophisticated technology, we may be able to overcome. But nobody is willing to invest because it's not for the government, it's for obviously the exchange, but it's more the market participants who have to invest, in my view, and work with the exchange to achieve that transformation. Let me share with you that PSX has made investments to improve investors' digital access and shorten the settlement periods, which was the issue. So it's also updates in trading infrastructure. Pretty regular reviews happen. PSX would need to, of course, adopt cutting-edge technologies. The question is, where do we get manpower to get into the artificial intelligence and other tracks, because that would help the fintechs and others. And I think there we need to do some more work because that will bring in flawless. First, the market will come into, so there will be modern practices with it, but we will then have real-time execution and settlements and safe settlements, of course, which is very critical. Infrastructure modernization has started, but it is not mature. And as I said, the cutting-edge financial tools like digital assets, employing artificial-based technologies for risk management and regulatory supervision can, of course, improve our ecosystem. But it requires a holistic effort. And I must confess, both the PSX as well as the market participants haven't really held each other's hand as yet. So we are hoping the maturity will come because the market gives you huge returns. And I do feel the market participants need to invest more. Obviously, PSX has to perform better in its returns in terms of the annual results to be able to reinvest a lot of that in the stock exchange modernization. One of the major things that we did was to buy from Shenzhen Stock Exchange the world-class systems of national trading system, and it includes a surveillance system. The speed is very fast, and there is no issue with lack of surveillance in the transaction. So that's improved, and risk management systems have also been strengthened. We have tried to communicate this to the markets, but as you know, issue is of literacy. So we have to, because low-level participants don't have an appreciation of the level of confidence that is being built in the market. They're still perceiving the old stock exchange. And I think if we can get the market to appreciate this, NTS was a major revolution. We went through a very difficult period. Initially, when it was launched, there was a lot of complaints. There were market had difficult time, but when they embraced it and they had to change their own front-end system, that was the most difficult time. The resistance from the market to the change in the front-end system, it required investment, was huge. That will explain to you the difficulty in achieving a swifter transformation to the technology. That was a very classic example, and SECP was also watching, and we had like days and ends of consultation with the market. Now, the other is, there are other exchanges with whom we could have partnerships. That is moving almost, that's not moving. And obviously, usually it's the market that goes out and taps, for instance, the Singapore Stock Exchange or Malaysia. But what would help is if we were to have multi-product and dual listing like Malaysia has and some of those other innovations and what Turkey has. If we could bring in that, and in fact that's the next phase that we are hoping the incoming CEO has an agenda that as a chairperson of the stock exchange, I am going to discuss with him, and with his skills, we should be able to move faster on some of these areas. So let me stop here.
Yeah, sure. At least we know the PSX CEO is him. At least we know that PSX CEO is him, it's not her. So, Akif Saab, obviously PSX is just one player in the financial system. I think there are other stakeholders that also need to up their game in terms of the technological innovation, whether it's the KYC part, whether it's a payment part, whether it's a settlement part, and so forth. So what role SECP is playing in getting those financial institutions up to and kind of utilize the modern cutting edge technologies and so forth?
I think for us, and myself particularly, for all intent and purposes, these capital market infrastructure entities are technology companies, all three of them. There is a lot of value in terms of sort of having a system which is consistent and coherent among themselves, be it the trading to clearing and to the depository. That's what I touched on earlier briefly, that we have asked the three entities to look at the possibility of how they can reduce, I talked about in terms of cost, but of course they have to maintain 3 DR sites, they have to have backups separately, and of course the data also flows between the entities for different purposes, legs of the transaction. That's the one area which we are focused on. I think even with the present technology, there is a large gap between the capital market institutions, which Dr. Shamshad touched on, and the market intermediaries. I think this is where the e-clear concept where trading only brokers can come in. Their back office is all taken care by e-clear. That's the first part. And now centralized gateway, that can be it's a white label product. So if a broker wants to use that under its banner, that can be done also. So the plug and play you referred to is very much there. We have developed a regulatory framework for only digital only broker. And in fact, we are going out and trying to solicit interest from the market. We want to talk to different potential clients. We are already in touch with them. Our next 2 days, my team is here and they are going to talk to different licensed financial advisor and to create awareness and try to understand if there are issues in terms of the framework or not. I think you as digital only asset management company, you have gone through the journey and we are trying to find a partner per se, not a regulatee, to actually test this framework and be in the market. Because I personally believe that the costs have to go down and the technology brings two parts to it. One is the outreach. It increases the outreach, but at the same time, it lowers the compliance cost. Yeah. Because everything is built in the system itself. This is our focus area for SECP, to work with individuals and the firms. Again, this is, as I said earlier, the CFA Association or CFA Society Pakistan. The members are the right candidates or the market which we want to pitch and we want to work with in terms of if they are interested in either distribution, advisory, or a trading only broker, or even AMC. And of course, within mutual fund, we have IMLAC as a digital platform for distribution of mutual fund. And I think when I talked about fund management and the distribution, I think division of labor is the way forward. There has to be a specialization and a minimization of the cost through technology. That's the focus. And it's not limited only to capital market. It's for mutual fund as well and for insurance as well.
Makes sense. I think over the last few years, what we have seen, I think there's no one, as Madam you mentioned, it has to be an ecosystem. Everyone needs to invest in their technology. It cannot be just PSX or SECP or a particular organization. So when we were developing, we worked with CDC. I think we have seen the journey. It is definitely improving, and the initial offshoots are very, very encouraging. And maybe I think that the realization in our company is coming where maybe we don't need even corporates to be profitable. I think retail has so much money lying in the banks which is not invested. And if we can just double down and triple down with the help of the regulator and with the stakeholders, I think the base that we are talking about for the capital markets, whether it's the money market, whether it's equity or even the new products, I think that base has to be that retail rather than the corporates and so forth. Moving to Mattias, are there any lessons that we can learn with obviously we have been the beneficiary of technology in Sweden, and when 90% of your funds are coming from platforms and technology and so forth, are there any lessons that Pakistan can learn from?
I think first of all also is that there needs to be trust, and a lot of people that I speak to when they think about the financial community is often kind of harsh words and stories about things that have gone wrong, people that have mistreated them. So for example, when you started your venture, Shamoon, I was willing to put my name on it because I do believe that the trust factor, I can trust. Other parts you never know. Everything you do in life is kind of a venture, but so I think ways to ensure that the trust in the financial institutions are there, and when there are wrongdoings, that those are punished as well. I think that's a thing that we in Sweden did very well. On the other parts, I would say that Pakistan, sometimes I feel that you're very impatient. because it's a journey, and it's so important kind of to, and not everything needs to be right in the first stage, but you can take kind of the small steps. Every good step simplifies for entrepreneurs, for investors, it's easier kind of to go the whole way if you kind of divide the journey a little bit. And maybe not talk so much about what has gone wrong in the past, but what can we do from here? I think the potential is there. So many smart guys within technology and within finance that I'm confident that if there's just a will to look forward instead, that it's a long journey, but it will happen step by step.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll double down on that, the corporate governance, because you have touched upon that, and Adam has been talking about. How do you rate Pakistan in terms of the corporate governance compared to the other frontier or early emerging markets, I'd say, like Vietnam, for that matter, or Bangladesh, and so forth?
Yeah. The way we invest is that we have a very strong focus on what we call sustainability. Sustainability means different things for different people. But at the end, for us, that means that we want to invest in companies where owners are honest, where managements are good, but which also takes into consideration the employees and the longevity of those employees, make sure that they're treated fairly, and also have a thinking and understanding of the environmental impact of the businesses. So in that, we have an internal rating system called Tundra ESG Spectrum, where we score each company we invest in. And Pakistan in that system right now is currently on place second among our markets. Of course, it's positive bias that we selected companies that we believe in. But I would say that generally, to PSX, for example, I would say that you have surprisingly, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but surprisingly good regulations for companies, which means that the transparency is better than in many of our markets. And you also set kind of strict criteria, including sustainability criteria, which is helpful. So I think the Pakistan, from kind of a listed company perspective, is just as I felt when looking into it in 2005. You've actually come quite far. So Pakistan is one of the better markets from a sustainability perspective.
Okay. So something we should be happy about. Adam, you can take it from here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me get into some factual details. You know, we have launched at PSX a number of initiatives. Since you talked about sustainability, I think PSX and PICG, the Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance, we had a partnership to promote ESG, but also good governance moving forward. And we met almost all the critical industries, automotive industry, but all the other ones. And our purpose was to get a feedback, first of all, what is the baseline? This is a lot of hard work, and normally people shy away from it. And we had requested KPMG to be our knowledge partner. So we had an overall study, but also we brought in all the key operators of the industry to tell us their story. The issue is the story has not been told very strongly to foreign investors, because often the corporates put in staff which is kind of not a high profile staff, but a staff that is committed and knows the portfolio. When you bring in the banks, they have a portfolio of ESG, for instance, or product diversification, but they are not able to pull the story together. Since I've worked in the trenches on these matters, I feel this is very unfortunate. So I think we would have to continue to strive to get the message out to foreign investors that we are very sensitive to sustainability agenda, and we should move forward with sustainability linked bonds and other related products so that we are able to attract foreign investment into the country. And there are various versions of these bonds you could do. You could have carbon credit bonds, you could have several other formulations, but it will have to take the banking industry to come forward too. Now, if you look at the banking story, while we have a lot of money in the system, but we have a large population that is unbanked. And if you look at developing markets, their success has been that they have brought in the smaller players into the markets. And I speak from my regional perspective. You even go to Bangladesh, people are there with the smaller and retail. Now, we at PSX has developed e-IPO, which is, an innovation. We have introduced digitization in our various transactions, and that is helping the industry to move faster the transactions. And as I said, the ESG products, we have tried to put the story together by actually making sure that PSX, I made us join the World Federation as a member. We became a member of that, and we publicized it internationally. But within our own corridors, we have converted PSX into a sustainable promotion body virtually. We publish we published our first annual report in 2024, in which we have talked about our own self-listing and the discipline we have imposed on ourselves as a listed company now. And we have tried to bring in the industry knowledge into that so that foreigners pick up that report and are able to get a condensed view of it. And also we have made sure we have the guidelines in there, and we have published the regulatory requirements within our sustainability report. So these are things which obviously people need to read to be able to have confidence in our market. And this is one product diversification, but there are other product diversifications that are happening. But let me stop here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think obviously when the world is moving more and more towards ESG, I personally believe that Pakistan might not be investable for foreign investors if we don't follow the ESG metrics. Akif Sahab, I know you're already working a lot on the ESG side and so forth. Maybe you can shed a light on what's happening on the policy level for the listed or unlisted companies which will move towards that they at least take some steps towards the ESG journey.
I'll take forward from your last remarks in terms of what it will be in few years' time in terms of whether the companies who do not focus on ESG, will they be investable or not. I think as the regulator, the choice with us was to make few things mandatory or create awareness through interaction with the market. I think we had, in my view, rightly gone for the second option. And this is where we, after extensive consultation, we started with the ESG roadmap till 22, and at 23 we started translating into a set of guidelines which are in place now. Idea is to create awareness within the corporate sector. The next step was to make certain changes in the code of corporate governance, which we have done already. focusing on anti-harassment policies at the board level. Number one. Number two was the diversity and the gender. And third is the environment. So idea is the board needs to discuss it, and if need be, they need to disclose. Recently, we have, as of June 24, the listed companies are required in their June 24 financials, they would be required to disclose the gender pay gap. They have to comment on that. Then we have changed the curriculum or the requirement in terms of DTP. Specific topics have been included in terms of ESG. Something which we are working with the market and should be, it's already in the beta form, but should be up formally in December this year, is the portal for ESG Sustain. That will actually then showcase, and it goes to the heart of the approach we have adopted in terms of creating awareness. Because there are companies who are doing steps which can be a leading example for other companies. That's the approach. And of course, the sustainability standard S1 and S2, we would be coming out in terms of the adoption strategy on it. And I think this is where the debate would be, should it be restricted to the listed companies or should it include unlisted companies also? My personal view, not of the commission, is then it has to be done, it has to be done all across. Something which we are debating internally, because a listed company is dependent on quite a few unlisted companies in terms of supply chain. So it's an overall approach which we need to take, but something which internally we are discussing. We will be coming out public for consultation also on that.
Sounds good. I think we are stretching a little bit with time. One last question to each of you, starting with Mattias. What will make Pakistan a breakout nation, where foreign investors would actually love to come over and invest, and maybe what will make you invest 25% of your portfolio in Pakistan?
I think in a sense that we kind of always kept repeating that when we were talking about Pakistan and said that this is a good place to invest in. We get this criticism, what about reforms, and what about democracy, what about everything that we all know is wrong with the country. But we always kind of pointed back to the people, the corporates, the resilience of the corporates. I looked the other day and in the office, and we compared Nestle India with Nestle Pakistan. So did you know that these two companies in US dollars have grown the same over the last 20 years? Nestle Pakistan is 1/3 of Nestle India in terms of revenue, but Nestle India is priced 32 times higher. So I think the perception, that realization that this is actually a good place to invest in, not because everything is perfect, but because you have a very strong corporate culture, very, very good corporates here, managements that are used to handle difficult circumstances. They're not spoiled. If you can navigate Pakistan, then you can navigate everywhere. So I think that's the starting point. It's not as bad as it looks, but the perception part we need to change, and for that to happen, the first we need is stabilization. We don't need to make everything that has been bad good immediately, but we need to kind of make sure that the first question from foreign investors is not when is the next default, what about the current account, and what about the currency. You need stabilization. So from this trip, when we're kind of discussing that, the fact that it actually might seem that for the next couple of years that we might have kind of a more normal period, and actually maybe one of those periods when the current account is not that bad, and to use that in order to instill confidence in foreign investors. That in this case I would say build reserves, and ensure that the currency keeps floating. So I think I think that's all we need, and that's all the questions I get from foreign investors. It's about the stability. It's not that they wouldn't understand that there are opportunities here everywhere. It's just that They're just waiting for the next disaster, the next currency crisis, or the next default. So the patience for the next couple of years, and I think investors will come.
That's good. Ma'am, there's a question from audience as well, like it's on the same topic, how to develop confidence of global investors if the local investors are not investing in the stock exchange. How can we convince the global investors on that?
Well, we'll have to get a domestic investor base, but whether it is foreigners or domestic, ultimately it's all about trust and confidence, transparency, accountability of the markets, disclosure requirements, and making sure both domestic and foreign investors have equal understanding of how the system is changing. I have to say there is a lot of change that is coming. In fact, one of the irritants that we have in opening up accounts and how to move forward is actually because of our disclosure requirements, which are pretty tedious, and that is why it takes time. But at the end of the day, the foreigners have to take comfort that even though a large part of the economy is undocumented, but this part is very secure in a sense because there is documents behind. I think one of the serious problems that we have is that Pakistan does not have injection of massive liquidity from internal resources, which is because our institutional investor industries is lagging behind. While insurance markets have perked up, and there is enough transformation happening there. I recall when I was asked by one of the ministers of commerce to lead a dialogue with the insurance industry and prepare a reform package, and it was prepared and then it was handed over to SECP, and of course Akif Saab and I were in Islamabad. We had a lot of dialogue how to move this forward, which we did, and he is now the custodian of taking this forward. Pensions, in contrast, have unfortunately lagged behind. Pension funds are small in size, and obviously there is EOBI and others, but we need pension fund managers to come into Pakistan to actually help Pakistan pool the pension funds and restore confidence of the pensioners as well as of the markets. The real issue here is tax issues, restrictions from government of Pakistan. Yeah. And they have been very difficult and they are very rigid. They're not moving. This is a big agenda. When I was in Islamabad, we tried to do it, but because of the requirements of funding and liquidity needed for the government, it is very difficult to win that battle. So that is why I am counting on the foreign and private sector to take a lead in the pension fund development of the system. You pool the pensions and you have your long-term development projects on a safe path because you have stable flow of liquidity for it. It is growth boosting. You give flexibility to the markets to deploy this if you design the right regulatory framework. And I'm counting on that pension fund reforms will eventually move faster because there is logic, but touching the tax incentives right now under the fund program is going to be difficult too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's also a question of pension fund from audience as well. So Akif Saab, one initiative that SECP and the Finance Ministry has taken over the period of moving the KP government and now the federal and then the Punjab government to the VPS and the individual pension accounts, so forth. that money will now actually come in some shape and form to the capital markets, whether it's the bond market, whether it's the equity market, and so forth. But there's huge chunks sitting of the private sector, the occupational pension schemes, and so forth. So even if you look at the top 100 stock exchange listed companies, their provident fund and gratuity size is like 1,000 billion, and most of that ends up actually in the banking system. There's no clarity much on that as well. So from the regulatory perspective, how can we bring that money? How can we unlock that money for long-term projects like dams and so forth, and also having that social safety net for the employee base and so forth? We can argue that the government might be slow in adopting new stuff, but like the private sector is much more faster if there are more clear policy level decisions that can be taken, and that money can actually come into the capital markets and so forth.
I'll start with your original question to Mattias in terms of the foreign investor. I think a country with 250 million population, or 240, give and take, then we have just a large enough market on its own. I think we need to begin with, we need to focus at the domestic investors, something which we started the discussion at. I think ease, that's one part. And ease is not only for investors, it is for the issuers also. So how quickly they can come into the market. Second, of course, is the transparency aspect of it, whether the investors have the confidence. I talked about 3 basic pillars. One, of course, is investor awareness, ease of onboarding and everything. Second, in my view, is capital formation, IPOs and be it equity or debt. That's what our focus is. In terms of timelines, we have, along with PSX, agreed on certain dates. We have made it we have issued a formal notification, and we benchmark ourselves against each and every application. It's 14 working days from the receipt of application, 29 working days from receipt of application to trading. This can still be reduced by substantially, but there are certain legal amendments and the statutes which needs to be done. We are working on those. Then the second part comes in terms of which has happened when Dr. Shamshad was the caretaker finance minister last year, December, is a new asset class coming in as a sovereign Islamic sukuks being auctioned. I think it's been too early to judge, but the trend is very encouraging in terms of the response, the pricing, the transparency. And we are working with the State Bank for developing a secondary market, for a vibrant secondary market also for that particular class of assets. So I think that will bring different class of investors into Pakistan Stock Exchange. And third, of course, is the liquidity and the products. Liquidity, we working with the brokers, and we have, along with the brokers and the capital market institutions, we want to reduce the settlement time from T+2 to T+1. I think that's something which will be announced in terms of the roadmap when that will be in place. Then the products is something, I think to launch a product is one part of it, but to make it a vibrant and liquid product, that's the focus area for us. In terms of investors, you talked about 2 major pools of liquidity which are missing in Pakistan as a whole. One, of course, is the insurance sector. It's not, it should be. It's less than 1% penetration. And second is the contributory pension. I believe with the contributory pensions very much in place as far Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is concerned. Punjab has already done the legal amendments. They are working on the rules. They need to fine tune, and I think they want to amend both the existing defined benefit as well as the defined contribution. They have come up with the contribution, but the rules they want to do simultaneously. I think it should be done within this calendar year. We are in touch with the government of Sindh as well, and then the federal government. I think that's an avenue which will bring a steady inflow, but to begin with, it will be I think that not that substantial, but over time it will grow. Same is the case with the insurance. We have developed a 5-year roadmap for development of the insurance industry. There are certain policy level decisions which we are pursuing with the government of Pakistan, federal government that is. And then there are major impediment is the framework itself. We have amended it, we have put it up to the federal government, and we are pushing it up so that it can go to the parliament and can be enacted. Certain amendments would be in the context of risk-based capital. There will be IFRS 17 implementation, so we believe that there will be a consolidation in the insurance industry, and particularly in the non-life, and that should encourage bigger, stronger, and the market to go out and actually, and of course one focus area for us which we have been successful up till now is for privatization of all the public sector insurance entities. The Cabinet Committee on SOE has decided on that. Now the ball is with the Privatization Commission now. I think that will bring, as the two companies are not listed, NICL and State Life. Mm-hmm. That should help the market itself and of course overall efficiency in the insurance sector.
Right. Perfect. With that, I think we have crossed the timeline stipulated for me. So maybe I'll.
Thank you, panel members and Mr. Shamoon. That was quite an enlightening discussion. I would now like to request our panelists to remain on stage for mementos. I would also like to invite the newly elected board members, Mr. Junaid Saeed, Mr. Abdul Rahman Tahir, and the Executive Director of CFA Society Pakistan, Ms. Sarwat Ehsan, to please come up on stage to give the token of appreciation to our guests. Mr. Shamoon, I kindly request you to please present the plaque to Mr. Mattias. Next, I would like to request Mr. Shamoon to please present the plaque to Mr. Akif Saeed. Next, I would like to request Mr. Shamoon to please present the plaque to Dr. Shamshad. Lastly, I would like Mr. Akif Saeed to please present the plaque to Mr. Shamoon. We sincerely hope that the discussions held here today have offered new perspectives and inspired some fresh ideas that can help us guide us toward a more prosperous and inclusive society. Thank you, guests, for being here and for making this event a success. You may all now proceed for dinner. Good night.